The PCPD just lost one of its finest, and Port Charles will never be the same. Just minutes ago, a report leaked that his General Hospital fans in absolute shock, Harrison Chase may have been murdered off-screen. While Brook Lynn was waiting for him to come home and start their family, a grisly discovery at the docks suggests that Chase's investigation into the Michael Corinthos frame-up led him straight into a deadly trap. Was he silenced by a villain we haven't seen yet, or is this the final move in Willow's dark game? Stay tuned, because the evidence we're about to show you confirms that Chase's life, and his future with Brook Lynn, is officially in ruins. Hello everyone and welcome. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, support me and give this video a thumbs up. The abrupt and tragic departure of Harrison Chase from the canvas of General Hospital has sent shock waves through the dedicated fan base, leaving many viewers reeling from the unexpected turn of events involving Josh Swickard, the talented actor who played the principal detective for several years. What began as whispers and suspicions in soap opera circles swiftly developed into widespread conjecture about a dramatic exit, with some sources stating Chase died violently and others citing behind-the-scenes actions that led to Swickard's departure from the program. In the turbulent world of daytime drama where plots twist at breakneck speed and character destinies hang by the thinnest of threads, Chase's departure is especially startling because he had long been one of the more stable, morally grounded characters in Port Charles. Harrison Chase first arrived in town as a committed police officer, working with Dante Falconer and soon establishing himself as a man of integrity amidst the maelstrom of mob transactions, corporate intrigue, and personal betrayals that define the city's terrain. His journey became interwoven with Brooklyn courtdoms in a heartwarming romance that began with deception, progressed through true devotion, and culminated in a marriage that promised stability. Fans witnessed Chase face professional hurdles ranging from demotions to high-stakes investigations. Always seeking to do the right thing even when the lines blurred. His ties with family, particularly his complex relationship with Hamilton Finn and the discovery of paternity, gave levels of emotional complexity. However, the character has recently become entangled in a web of obsession and questionable decisions. Most notably, his preoccupation with establishing Michael Corinthos' involvement in Drew Cain's shooting. What began as a pursuit of justice evolved into something more personal, propelling Chase into actions that alienated those closest to him. As recent events transpired, tensions reached a breaking point. Chase's drive to expose Michael drove him to create evidence or manipulate events in ways that violated his previously unwavering ethics. Brook Lynn, who was always the voice of reason in their partnership, challenged him with ultimatums, warning that his vendetta would destroy their aspirations of adopting a child and making a life together. The pressure on their marriage became palpable. Arguments in the Courain house, emotional pleadings, and moments of raw vulnerability demonstrated how far Chase had deviated from the guy Brook Lynn fell in love with. Viewers sensed a storm brewing, with spoilers indicating implications such as job loss, damaged friendships, and possibly even separation. Then came the deluge of online chatter, messages declaring Chase gone, movies foreshadowing a terrible death, and rumors that Swickard was fired abruptly. Some accounts created a bleak picture of Chase being shot unexpectedly, possibly in the line of duty or during a confrontation related to his investigation, transforming a routine case into a tragic ambush that mirrored the dangers that many Port Charles residents endure. Chase dying suddenly felt dramatic and terrible. He had already survived poisoning, family secrets, and career disappointments, emerging stronger or more contemplative. A bullet ending his story seemed almost too sudden for such a beloved character. Yet soap operas rely on unexpected shocks to propel the plot ahead. If true, the consequences would be far-reaching. Brook Lynn left widowed or abandoned, struggling with grief while questioning her own role in pushing him away. Dante lamenting the loss of his colleague and friend, and the PCPD confronting yet another vacuum in its ranks. Even individuals like Willow, whose personal scandals are connected with Chase's recent errors, may bear the weight of indirect responsibility. The timing during the sweeps period heightened the impact, since networks frequently save their most dramatic surprises for ratings increases. Despite the euphoria, formal confirmations remained elusive. Neither ABC nor Swickard published statements directly refuting or confirming the rumors, leaving room for skepticism. Some insiders speculated that the exit was due to contract negotiations, personal choices. Swickard and his wife are expecting their third child, which may motivate a desire for more family time or artistic decisions to freshen the canvas with new dynamics. Speculation erupted in fan forums, social media groups, and YouTube channels dedicated to general hospital spoilers. Chase was unexpectedly killed or Swickard fired, eliciting emotions from long-standing viewers who had spent years in the character storyline. Some supported the actor's performance, praising his relationship with the co-stars and ability to communicate quiet strength. Others criticized the writing, claiming that Chase's recent spiral into obsession felt forced, designed to create drama rather than organic progression. The contrast with previous storylines, Chase as the respectable cop who once performed at the nurses' ball or helped friends through crises heightened the sting of his impending destruction. If he was really written out through death, he would join a lengthy history of Port Charles losses, ranging from heroic deeds to terrible accidents, each leaving voids that new characters must fill. Alternatively, if the exit entailed merely leaving town, perhaps fleeing in shame with Willow or seeking refuge with family elsewhere, it provided a less permanent door for future returns, a familiar soap cliché. Regardless of the specific process, Josh Swickard's absence on the screen signals a shift for General Hospital. Swickard portrayed Chase with warmth, charisma, and grounded reality, making him accessible among the larger-than-life schemers and villains. His exit, whether staged as a stunning murder or a more subdued fade-out, highlights the unpredictable nature of serialized storytelling. Fans process the news with tears, discussions, and petitions, hoping for a fake-out or a brief halt. In the meantime, the play continues, weaving new strands around Brooklyn's anguish, Michael's vindication, and the ongoing threats hiding in Port Charles. Chase's story, albeit being cut short, reminded viewers of the vulnerability of even the most steady lives in a place where no one is truly protected. As the episodes continue to air, the hole left behind serves as a sad reminder of how deeply these fictional characters are ingrained in human emotions, generating discussions long after the credits roll. The mystery behind the firing and death allegations continues, merging fact with fan-fueled hyperbole. But the impact is undeniable. A chapter ends unexpectedly, leaving fans wondering what would have happened if Chase had stayed to fight another day. The night descended on Port Charles like a held breath. The kind of silence that was not serene, but rather waiting. Street lights reflected off the rain-slicked pavement, transforming the metropolis into a haze of golden shadow. Sirens sounded in the distance before fading away. As if they, too, knew not to get too close to what was about to happen. Chase had always trusted his gut. They had led him down deeper alleyways and confronted him with harsher realities than most people have ever experienced. Tonight, however, his belly felt abnormally quiet, which should have been a warning sign. In his area of employment, K usually signified that the storm had passed overhead. He stood outside the abandoned warehouse near the docks, collar up against the chill. The tip was vague, too vague, but it had a personal feel about it. A murmur traveled through the regular routes, indicating that someone he cared about could be in danger. That was all it took to bring him here, alone. And against his better judgment. The inside of the structure smelt of rust and old ocean. Every footstep echoed too loudly, and every breath felt vulnerable. He walked cautiously, keeping his hand near his weapon, but without pulling it. Chase did not desire conflict. He needed answers. "Hello," he exclaimed, hating the way his voice echoed back at him, twisted. "I am here. You said you had something to tell me." He was met with silence. Then a gentle scrape of metal against concrete. Chase spun abruptly, studying the shadows. His heart quickened, but he forced himself to remain steady. He'd walked into traps before. He had also walked out of them. A person stepped into the gloomy light, not a stranger, someone he knew, someone he had previously trusted. For a period, neither of them spoke. The weight of silent past filled the gap between them, heavy as fog. Chase's mind raced, recalling past discussions, minor indicators he'd overlooked, and times that now felt like warnings he should have heeded. "You shouldn't have come alone," the figure stated calmly. Chase nearly laughed. "You're the one who asked me to come here." "Yeah," the figure responded, his voice tense. "And that was a mistake." Before Chase could react, a movement appeared at the edge of his vision. Another presence, then another. The warehouse was no longer empty. He'd stepped into a nicely prepared net. His hand reached for his rifle, but the click of a safety release held him in place. He recognized that sound. "Too close, too fast, easy," someone said behind him. Chase gulped. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "It already is." The truth struck him in fragments. A setup, a treachery that impacted more than one individual. He'd been circling this operation for weeks, convinced he was closing in. Instead, he had walked right into its middle. "What do you want?" he asked. "For you to stop," stated the first figure. "Your questions are hazardous. You're getting too close." Chase's jaw tightened. "That's kind of my job," he said with a dry smile. "Not tonight." For a brief moment, he pondered making a move. He'd trained for situations like this. Disarm, dive, and roll. But there were too many of them and their angles were incorrect. One false step and this would be disastrous. The rain poured down outside, banging against the metal walls. The sound filled the place, frenetic and unrelenting, like someone else's heartbeat. "You don't have to do this," Chase explained. "Whatever they promised you, it's not worth it." The person paused. There was only a glimmer of doubt, but Chase noticed it. He pressed his advantage, voice firm, eyes fixed on the one person who might still remember who they used to be. Then a shot rang out. In the cramped room, the sound was loud, like a violent crack tearing up the air. Chase felt the hit before completely registering the sound. A stinging, burning force smashed into his side, pushing the air out of his lungs. He swayed, hand rushing to the cut, fingers slippery and crimson. Time slowed. Faces were blurred. The warehouse shifted, the world narrowing to the pounding of his own heartbeat in his ears. "No," somebody exclaimed. The speech sounded distant and distorted, almost as if it were underwater. Chase dropped to one knee and then on the concrete floor. The cold permeated his clothing, grounding him in the worst manner conceivable. He tried to push himself up and focus on the people around him, but his vision blurred at the edges. The figure who had paused now appeared horrified. Horror written on their face. "I didn't mean," but purpose wasn't important anymore. The damage was done. Another shot was fired, this time into the roof, and the echo set everyone into motion. Shouts erupted. Footsteps are dispersed. Chase was forgotten in the bustle, leaving him wounded on the warehouse floor as the individuals who had lured him here escaped into the night. Silence fell, interrupted only by the rain and the irregular sound of his breathing. Chase laid there, staring at the dark beams above. His mind wandered, drifting from the present to memories he hadn't revisited in years. Smiles, arguments, promises made at moments of hope. He wondered dimly whether someone would find him in time. Footsteps approached again. This time it's lighter. "Careful." A familiar voice yelled his name, panic running through each syllable. "Chase. Chase, are you here?" Relief flooded over him, feeble, but genuine. He attempted to respond, but the words stuck in his throat. The voice grew closer, and a face materialized above him, eyes wide with fright. "Oh my God," the individual said softly, going to their knees beside him. "What happened? Who did it?" Chase tried to grin to reassure them, but his face refused to cooperate. "I guess I asked the wrong question," he muttered, hands pushed into the wound, unsuccessfully attempting to stop the flow. "Stay with me," the individual begged. "Please, help is on the way. I called it in. Please hang on." "Okay." The rain sounded louder now, like if the world was closing in. Chase concentrated on the voice and the feel of the hands on his side. He didn't want to let go of the connection. "Not yet." "I'm tired," he said softly. "Don't you dare," the person yelled, tears streaming down their cheeks. "You're not allowed to be tired right now." A siren screamed in the distance, becoming louder by the second. Hope flared, weak and uncertain. Chase wanted to believe in it. He wanted to believe he'd get through it, that he'd wake up in a hospital bed with someone chastising him for being reckless. His eyesight clouded and the lights above him turned into streaks. He blinked rapidly, attempting to clear it. The world felt heavy, as if gravity had quadrupled its hold. The sirens came closer, so near now. "I'm here," he muttered, unsure who he was speaking to. To the individual kneeling beside him, to the city he had vowed to safeguard. To himself. The globe twisted one more time and the voices faded into a low, faraway hum. When the paramedics arrived, they moved quickly. Voices overlapped. Commands were given. The equipment clattered against the concrete floor. They worked on him with practiced zeal. Hands steady even as the situation worsened. However, even the most rapid response is not always sufficient. The rain continued to fall as they lifted Chase onto the stretcher, combining with the blood to wash away evidence, but not the weight of what had transpired. The individual who found him stood back, hands shaking as the ambulance doors closed. The sirens roared into the night, whisking Chase away from the warehouse, the betrayal, and the life he battled so hard to keep together. At the hospital, the corridors were alive with bustle. Doctors and nurses moved with grim efficiency, their features fixed in professional calm. The news traveled rapidly, whispered from room to room, causing alarm among the personnel who knew the name on the arriving chart. Friends arrived in shards, enticed by phone calls and fear. They gathered in the waiting area, their voices quiet, their gaze fixated on the doors leading to the trauma bay. No one wanted to express the worry that was weighing heavy in their chest. Minutes turned into hours. The fluorescent lights pulsed overhead, too bright and cruel. Every time the door swung wide, hearts raced, only to sink again when the news wasn't what they were expecting. When a doctor finally arrived, the room appeared to hold its breath. "I'm sorry," the doctor stated sadly. The words hit like a physical blow. Someone sobbed. Another looked aside, unable to accept the reality that was becoming apparent. The world altered and the future rewrote itself. In that one moment, Chase was gone. The city would awaken to the news as if a bruise had appeared overnight. Shock would reverberate around Port Charles, causing discussions to pause in mid-sentence as the reality set in. A good man taken too soon. A guardian who could not keep himself safe from betrayal. Questions would follow. Who set him up? Who pulled the trigger? And why did everything come crashing down so quickly? In the aftermath, grief swept over the individuals who loved him in waves. Anger would follow, intense and unwavering. Regret would murmur all the things left unsaid, all the memories that could never be regained. The warehouse would remain empty, just another neglected structure on the docks. But for those who knew the reality about what happened there, it was never just a location. It would be the place where trust crumbled, secrets turned deadly, one life was lost, and countless others were permanently altered. And somewhere in the city's quiet areas, the sound of that solitary gunshot would linger. A reminder that even the strongest might fall when darkness closes in on all sides. The days following Chase's death felt surreal, as if the city had slid into a hazy version of reality. Port Charles moved, although slowly. When someone spoke his name, the conversation came to an end. People spoke in half sentences, as if expressing too much might make the loss permanent. The probe reopened wounds that had not yet begun to heal. Detectives tracked Chase's final moves, looking through the warehouse, the docks, and the network of half-burned contacts and encrypted messages he left behind. Every sign led to betrayal, but betrayal is a shady activity. It does not leave fingerprints readily. It lives in overly long glances, awkward silences, and trusting the wrong person at the worst possible time. The individual who had found him that night was unable to sleep. Every time they closed their eyes, they saw the concrete floor slick with rain and blood, and felt their hands helplessly press against a wound they couldn't heal. Guilt sank into their chest, thick and relentless, whispering that they should have arrived sooner, begged he not go alone, and said something different the last time they spoke. Grief has a way of rewriting the past as a series of impossible repairs. At the station, his desk remained untouched. Someone had neatly placed his badge atop a stack of unfinished reports, a subtle tribute that spoke volumes. Nobody wanted to clear his belongings yet. It felt too decisive, like acknowledging that he wasn't merely late returning from a case, that he wasn't going to stroll through the door with that familiar half-smile and an apology for causing so much concern. The individual who had hesitated in the warehouse was discovered 2 nights later. Not dead, just broke. They handed themselves in, their eyes empty and their voices shaking as they admitted to being part of the setup, watching things spiral out of control. They said they did not fire the fatal shot, that the gun went off in a panic, and that anarchy took over before anybody could intervene. The courts would assess if that was true, or just another layer of self-preservation. However, the confession ripped open the wound all over again. It confirmed what everyone had feared. Chase hadn't simply been unlucky. He was betrayed by someone he trusted. The shooter remains at large. The truth tormented the city. Someone out there carried the weight of that single moment. The decision that took a life and broke so many others. Each passing stranger became a question mark. Each darkness felt heavier. The thought that justice might never be fully realized gnawed at those who had relied on Chase to bring it when no one else could. In the dark hours before morning, those who loved him found themselves speaking to his memory as if he could still hear. They pledged to be braver, kinder. They were more careful with those they cared about. Promises born of loss are frail, but they were important. They were his method of remaining present in a world that had already begun to move on without him. And somewhere in the areas he formerly occupied, there was a persistent sensation that his job was incomplete. That the questions he posed, the facts he sought, had a way of outlasting him. The darkness that consumed him had not achieved anything permanent. It had just exposed how much light he had brought to the planet throughout his time.